The night was cold and heavy with mist. The alien forest stretched like an endless ocean of shadows. Every tree rose tall and strange with glowing veins pulsing faint light in the dark. A human explorer named Daniel walked carefully, his boots sinking into the soft ground. He had come here searching for minerals, but what he found that night was something far greater. At first he thought it was only the wind. A faint whimper carried through the twisted branches, but when he stopped listening closely, the sound came again, sharper, filled with pain. It was the cry of something alive. Fragile and frightened, Daniel's heart raced. He tightened his grip on his scanner, his human mind telling him to be cautious, but his human heart pushing him forward. He followed the sound until he reached a clearing lit by strange blue plants. There, lying between the roots of a massive tree, was a small creature. It looked like a cub, but not like any animal Daniel had seen before. Its skin shimmered faintly, almost silver, and its eyes glowed a deep violet. It was thin, trembling, and weak. Its small chest rose and fell with effort. Daniel froze. He knew enough about alien laws to understand the danger. The High Empire forbade humans from interfering with their kind. Any human caught could face punishment, even death. But when he saw the cub's tiny claws scratching weakly at the soil, he felt something deep inside. Slowly he knelt down, his movements gentle. He took a small ration bar from his pack, breaking it into pieces. The cub turned its glowing eyes toward him. Its body shook, but it sniffed the air. Daniel pushed the food closer. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Easy now, little one, I won't hurt you," he said. The cub hesitated, then crawled weakly forward. Its jaws closed around the food, chewing desperately. The sound was heartbreaking. It was the sound of survival. The sound of something that wanted to live. Daniel watched, his chest tightened. He thought of his own world, his own people, how they too had once fought for survival in the cold stars. This little creature, whatever it was, deserved a chance. When the cub finished, it lifted its head. Its glowing eyes locked with his for a moment. Daniel felt something strange, a connection, like the cub was not only thanking him, but understanding him more than an animal's gaze. It was intelligent, curious, almost human in its emotion. He reached out slowly, letting the cub sniff his hand. Its nose was cold, its body shaking. Then it did something unexpected. It pressed its small head against his palm. The gesture was so innocent, so trusting, Daniel's breath caught. "You're not just lost, are you?" he whispered. "Someone left you here." The forest around them rustled. Daniel's eyes darted. For a second he thought he saw movement in the shadows. Tall figures watching, but when he blinked, there was nothing, only silence, only the cub still. The sense of being observed crawled across his skin. He picked the cub up, wrapping it gently in his jacket. It was lighter than he expected, fragile like glass. He felt its tiny heartbeat against his chest. Daniel knew this was dangerous. He knew he should leave the cub and walk away. But he also knew he could not. His heart refused. The law of the Empire meant nothing compared to the cry he had heard. As he turned to walk back toward his camp, the mist seemed thicker, the air colder. The cub stirred in his arms, letting out a soft sound. Almost like a word, Daniel stopped, looking down at it. His breath caught. The cub's violet eyes glowed brighter, staring deep into him. And then, in a voice faint and broken, almost impossible, it whispered, "Food." "Friend." Daniel's body froze. His mind spun. This was no ordinary creature. This was something far more from the shadows. Unseen eyes continued to watch. Recording every moment, the forest remained silent. But the future had already shifted that night. Daniel thought he had simply fed a starving cub. He did not know that he had just touched the beginning of a story that would change 1,000 worlds. The sun rose slowly over the alien forest, spilling light across the strange, glowing trees. Daniel woke inside his small camp, the cub still curled against his side. Its breathing was soft now, steady, and no longer filled with pain. He studied the little creature, realizing it had survived the night because of him. The cub opened its violet eyes and looked directly at him. There was no fear, only recognition. It made a soft sound, somewhere between a purr and a word. Daniel laughed nervously, scratching the back of his neck. He had never imagined himself keeping a wild alien child, but now that it was here, he could not bring himself to send it away. He broke another ration bar. Holding a piece out, the cub crawled toward it. Stronger than last night, Daniel noticed how fast it was adapting. Its body looked sharper, its skin glowing faintly like the veins of the trees around them. It was as if the forest itself lived inside the cub. "Guess I'll call you Leora," Daniel whispered. The cub tilted its head at the sound, blinking as if memorizing it. Then she let out a chirp. Soft but full of meaning, Daniel smiled. The name made her feel less like a creature and more like someone real. Days passed, and the bond between Daniel and Leora grew stronger. He taught her simple gestures. Pointing to objects, showing words, Leora learned quickly. Her eyes filled with a light that showed understanding. She was not just a lost animal. She was something far greater. One evening, as the two sat near the fire, the forest grew restless. The cries of alien beasts echoed in the distance. Leora's ears twitched. She stood suddenly, placing herself between Daniel and the shadows, when a monstrous predator stepped out, jaws wide and glowing teeth bared. Daniel froze. He reached for his blaster. But before he could fire, Leora moved. Her body shimmered with strange energy. She leapt forward, claws flashing. With a single strike, the predator fell, collapsing into the dirt. Daniel's jaw dropped. The cub was small, but her strength was terrifying. She turned back to him, panting, violet eyes glowing even brighter. "You, safe," she whispered with effort. Daniel's heart pounded. Not only could she speak, but she had risked herself to protect him. He knelt down, pulling her close. His mind was torn. What was Leora, and why had she been abandoned in the forest? As days turned into weeks, Daniel kept Leora hidden. When traders passed by his camp, he pretended to be alone. Rumors spread through the colonies about strange sightings in the forest, about hunters searching for something valuable. Daniel ignored them, but deep down, he knew it was connected to her. One night, while Leora slept, Daniel examined the glowing crystal necklace she had found and placed in his palm. It pulsed with the same energy that shimmered from her skin. He realized then that she belonged to something far greater than either of them. He feared that the wrong people might already be searching. Still, Daniel could not turn away. He watched her grow stronger every day, her claws sharper, her words clearer, her mind brighter. She was no longer just a cub. She was a child with a destiny. One afternoon, Leora asked a question that froze Daniel's heart. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Why, you help me?" she asked, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Daniel stared at her, his throat tight. "Because no one else would," he finally said. "Because you deserve to live just like anyone else." Leora leaned closer, pressing her head against his chest. Her voice trembled. Then, "I am yours." Daniel felt both warmth and fear. He knew she did not belong to him. She belonged to a future far larger. But at that moment, he promised silently that he would protect her as long as he could. Unknown to him, far above the forest, ships of the Empire scanned the land, searching for their missing heir. Their instruments caught faint traces of her energy. The hunters whispered of rewards for whoever returned the lost child. And yet Daniel and Leora sat together by the fire, unaware of the storm that was coming, unaware that their bond was forbidden, dangerous and powerful enough to shake empires. That night, as stars burned bright above, Daniel dreamed of Earth, of home, and of how strange fate had been to put him in this place. He had no idea that saving a single cub would change the course of 1,000 worlds. The forest was quiet that night, too quiet. Daniel sat by the fire, sharpening a blade while Leora rested nearby. Her violet eyes reflected the flames as if they carried their own light. She was no longer a weak cub. She had grown into a strong and alert being. Still small, but filled with an energy that frightened Daniel sometimes. For weeks, Daniel had lived with a constant weight in his chest. He knew something was coming. The signs were clear. Strange ships had been seen near the colony. Rumors of Imperial soldiers searching for a lost heir spread like wildfire. He tried to convince himself that they were only rumors, but when he looked at Leora, he felt the truth pressing on him that evening. Leora walked over and sat beside him. She placed the glowing crystal necklace she carried around her neck. Her small hand touched his arm. Her voice was soft. "You afraid?" she said. Not as a question, but as a truth. Daniel smiled faintly, trying to hide his fear. "Maybe a little," he admitted, "but I'll protect you." No matter what, Leora tilted her head, studying him with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "They come," she whispered. Daniel's hand froze on the blade. "Who comes?" he asked. But Leora only pressed her head against his shoulder, refusing to answer. Later that night, the sound came, a low hum like thunder hidden in the clouds. Daniel rushed outside the camp, his breath caught when he saw them. Above the forest, a massive ship hovered, its lights cutting through the mist. Smaller crafts descended like predators. Spreading out across the trees, his instincts screamed at him. He ran back into the tent. "Leora, we have to go," he whispered urgently. He grabbed his pack, slinging it over his shoulder. But when he turned, Leora stood still, her eyes glowing brighter. "They know," she said, her voice heavy. "They know me." Daniel felt panic claw at his chest. "Then we run," he snapped, grabbing her hand. He pulled her into the forest, weaving between glowing trunks and roots. Behind them, the whine of engines grew louder. Soldiers in dark armor dropped from the sky, their weapons gleaming in the strange light. The two of them ran, branches whipping past. The forest echoed with shouts, beams of energy firing into the trees. Daniel held Leora close, his heart hammering. But she was not afraid. Her eyes narrowed, her voice calm. "Not yet," she whispered. They broke into a clearing, only to find themselves surrounded. Soldiers formed a circle, rifles aimed. Their leader stepped forward, his helmet reflecting the fire of the torches. His voice rang cold. "Return the child, human." Daniel pushed Leora behind him, his blaster drawn. "She's not yours," he growled. The soldiers laughed, but their leader's tone did not change. "She belongs to the Empire. She is blood of the throne. Heir to 1,000 worlds, you will hand her over. Or die here." Daniel's heart froze. He had feared something like this, but hearing it spoken out loud shook him to the core. He glanced back at Leora, her small form standing tall despite the soldiers. Her voice was steady. "I go," she said. Daniel spun. "No, you don't. I promise to protect you." Leora placed her glowing hand on his. Her violet eyes softened. "You already did," she whispered. "You gave me food, you gave me life, now I must go. Or they kill you." Daniel's throat tightened. He shook his head, but before he could argue, Leora stepped past him, her small body shining in the firelight. The soldiers lowered their weapons, bowing their heads. The leader gestured. And a transport lowered. Leora looked back one last time. Her eyes met Daniel's. In them he saw trust, sorrow, and something more, a promise. "I come back," she said softly before Daniel could reach her. The soldiers pulled her into the ship. The engines roared, and in moments, the craft lifted off, disappearing into the clouds. Silence fell over the forest, the only sound the fading echo of her words. Daniel dropped to his knees, his chest aching. His hands shook as he clutched the crystal necklace she had given him before. Tears burned in his eyes. He had lost her above. The stars glittered cold and distant. Daniel stared at them, knowing she was out there, knowing she was more than he had ever imagined, and yet he could not escape the weight of her final look, the look that begged him to live. That night, alone in the forest, Daniel felt something inside him break. He did not know if he would ever see Leora again. But he knew this. His life would never be the same. The cry of the forest was gone, replaced by silence, and in that silence, Daniel swore to himself that if she ever returned, he would be ready. Years passed like shadows drifting across the stars. Daniel remained on the colony world. But he was no longer the same man who had once walked into the forest. He worked quietly, repairing machines for traders, fixing broken engines, living in silence. To most, he was just another human trying to survive among alien empires. But deep inside, he carried a weight that never left him. Every night, when the sky was clear, Daniel would look up at the stars, searching. Somewhere out there, Leora was alive, taken from him, raised among rulers and soldiers. The memory of her violet eyes haunted him. The last words she had spoken, "I come back," echoed like a promise that never faded. He kept the glowing crystal she had given him. It hung from a chain around his neck, pulsing faintly with light sometimes when he touched it. He thought he could almost feel her presence, a whisper in his heart reminding him that his kindness had mattered. The colonists often whispered about Daniel. Some called him cursed. Others said he had seen something forbidden. He ignored them. He had no friends, no family, only the memory of a cub who had grown into something more. Time moved on, but the Empire's shadow never faded. Posters of the Empress's court occasionally reached the colonies. Never with her image, only symbols of power and control. Daniel wondered if Leora was somewhere in those halls. He wondered if she remembered the man who had fed her when she was starving. One evening, while Daniel worked on a broken speeder, a group of children passed by, laughing. Their voices reminded him of her, of the way she had first spoken the word friend. His chest tightened. He dropped his tools and walked back to his cabin, staring at the necklace glowing faintly in the dark. He sat in silence, whispering to himself, "Are you safe, Leora? Do you still remember me?" His voice cracked. The loneliness was sharp, sharper than any blade. The years did not make him forget. Instead, they carved the memory deeper. He replayed every moment of their short time together, the way she had pressed her head against his palm, the way she had called him protector, the way she had walked into the ship with soldiers while he stood helpless. Sometimes at night, Daniel dreamed in those dreams. He saw her standing tall, no longer a cub, but a warrior. Her eyes burned with fire. She spoke to him, her voice strong. "Wait for me." Then he would wake, alone. The forest silent outside his cabin. Still, Daniel never left the colony. He refused to run from the memory. He believed one day fate would return her to him. He did not know how, he only knew he had to wait. The burden grew heavier with every passing year. His hair turned gray, his hands rough, but the fire in his heart did not fade. Every kindness he offered to strangers reminded him of her. Every small act of mercy he saw reminded him of the choice he had made that night in the forest. One day, traders arrived from deep space. Their voices carried tales of great battles, of entire systems bending before a mysterious new commander. They spoke of a young leader in the empire, a warrior with glowing violet eyes who brought both fear and respect wherever she walked. Daniel's heart nearly stopped when he heard. He asked questions, careful not to show his trembling. The traders only shrugged. She rises fast, they say. Some whisper she carries the blood of rulers. Some say she is chosen by the stars themselves. That night, Daniel could not sleep. His mind burned with the possibility. Could it be her? Could Leora truly have survived and become something greater? He touched the necklace, his chest tight. If it was her, then the child he had once fed was no longer a child. She was a force shaping the galaxy, yet the burden grew heavier. He feared what kind of life she lived. Was she safe? Or was she trapped in chains of power? Did she still remember kindness? Or had the Empire twisted her heart into something cruel? Daniel sat alone by the fire, whispering to the stars, "If you rise, rise with mercy, Leora. Don't forget who you are." His voice cracked, but there was hope hidden inside. He did not know that far away across the Empire. Leora sometimes touched her own chest where his jacket once kept her warm. She remembered his face, his words, his kindness. She carried it with her like a flame, even as she fought her way through battlefields and courts. For Daniel, the burden of waiting was heavy, but it was also unbroken. He believed that one day she would return. One day the forest's cry would become a song of reunion. Until then, he carried the weight alone. A human whose smallest kindness had changed the fate of a child who was destined to change the fate of worlds. The galaxy trembled under the news. Whispers spread from trader to soldier, from colonies to hidden worlds. A new ruler had risen within the Empire, not an old warlord or ancient bloodline, but someone young, fierce, and unstoppable. Her name was Empress Leora, and her violet eyes glowed like fire in the dark. On the colony where Daniel still lived, the announcement arrived on a silver broadcast screen in the market square. The crowd gathered, aliens of many species staring in awe as the words appeared. The 1,000 worlds are now united under the new Empress. Chosen by destiny, crowned by victory. Daniel stood among them, his heart pounding, his weathered hands clenched at his sides. When the screen shifted, showing only a silhouette crowned in light, he felt it, an energy that pulsed inside him. The same energy he had felt in the forest years ago. The crystal around his neck glowed faintly as if answering the call. At night, alone in his cabin, he whispered, "It's you, isn't it, Leora?" His voice broke. He had dreamed of this day, but he had never truly believed it would come. She had returned not as a frightened cub, but as the ruler of 1,000 worlds across the Empire. Her rise was swift and unstoppable. Armies bent their knees before her. Defeated rulers swore loyalty. She fought in battles where fire rained across planets, standing unshaken as fleets surrendered at her command. Her voice carried through grand halls, calm but unyielding. Her eyes burned with the strength of someone who had once known hunger, cold, and mercy. During her coronation, the galaxy's nobility gathered in the Crystal Citadel. The hall glowed with towers of light, banners of countless worlds hanging in silence. Leora entered clad in silver armor, her crown shaped like the wings of the stars. She raised her hand and the crowd bowed. But when she spoke, her words were not of domination. "I will not rule with fear," she said, her voice echoing across the hall. "I will rule with balance. I will rule with mercy." The nobles exchanged uncertain looks. This was not the voice of a tyrant. This was something else. Leora's gaze swept across the hall, but when she paused, it was as if she were staring at someone who was not there. Her eyes softened for a breath. Far away, Daniel touched the necklace and felt his heart ache. He could almost hear her voice. He could almost see her standing before him again. Rumors soon followed the coronation. Whispers that the Empress had once been saved by a human, that she carried inside her a memory that shaped her path. Some mocked the idea, calling it impossible, but others wondered if the tales were true. For why else would an Empress speak of mercy in a galaxy ruled by war? Back on the colony, Daniel tried to live as he always had. But something had changed. Soldiers wearing the crest of the Empire arrived one day. They marched through the settlement with purpose. Their leader carried a sealed message bearing the symbol of the throne. The people watched in silence as they stopped at Daniel's cabin. "Human Daniel," the leader said, his voice stern but respectful. "By order of the Empress of 1,000 worlds, you are summoned." Daniel froze, his breath leaving him. The crowd outside gasped. No one in living memory had heard of a human being summoned by the Empress herself. Daniel's hands trembled as he clutched the glowing necklace. "Why me?" he whispered, but deep inside he already knew. The soldiers offered no answers, only an escort to a grand starship that awaited in orbit. Daniel stepped aboard, his heart heavy with both fear and hope. The ship's walls shimmered with energy beyond anything he had ever seen. He stared out the window as the planet grew smaller behind him. For days the ship traveled through hyperspace. Every night Daniel lay awake, wondering what awaited him. Would she remember him? Was she the same Leora he had once held in his arms? Or had power changed her into something else? Finally the ship slowed, the stars shifted, and before him appeared the capital world of the Empire, a massive jewel of light and towers stretching into the heavens. His heart pounded as the ship descended toward the crystal citadel. Inside the grand hall, nobles and warriors stood in silence. The throne of the Empress glowed with silver light. Soldiers lined the walls, their armor polished. The air was thick with awe and fear. When Daniel stepped forward, guided by guards, every eye turned toward him. He felt small, out of place, a simple man among giants. But then the hall grew still. A figure rose from the throne, her armor shimmering, her crown glowing, her violet eyes locked onto his. The silence broke when she spoke, her voice strong yet trembling with emotion. "Father of mercy," she said, her words echoing across the hall. "At last, I found you," the nobles gasped. Some stepped back in shock. Soldiers stared in disbelief. An Empress had bowed her head before a human. Daniel's eyes burned with tears. He saw her, Leora, not as Empress, not as ruler, but as the cub he had once fed in the forest. The bond they shared had survived years, wars and empires. And now, standing in the heart of power, he realized the promise she had made so long ago was true. She had returned. The grand hall of the Crystal Citadel was filled with silence so deep, it seemed the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every noble, every soldier, every servant froze as the Empress of 1,000 worlds stepped down from her throne, her crown catching the light like fire. Her violet eyes never left Daniel. Daniel stood at the center, feeling small and fragile. His hands trembled as he clutched the glowing crystal around his neck. He had dreamed of this moment for 20 years, but dreams could never match the weight of reality. The child he had once held in his arms was now a ruler whose name carried across galaxies. Leora walked slowly toward him, each step echoing like thunder. Soldiers lowered their eyes. Nobles whispered in disbelief. Some looked horrified, others awed. When she reached him, the Empress of 1,000 worlds did something no one expected. She knelt, bowing her head before the human. "Father of mercy," she said, her voice carrying both power and tenderness. "The one who gave me life." The hall erupted with gasps. Some nobles shouted protests. "Impossible! A human cannot—" But Leora raised her hand, and silence fell again. Her eyes glowed brighter, and her voice hardened. "When I was nothing, abandoned and dying, this man fed me, sheltered me, gave me hope," she said. "Without him, there would be no Empress. Without him, there would be no 1,000 worlds united." Daniel's throat tightened. His knees nearly buckled under the weight of her words. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched her shoulder. She looked up at him, her eyes soft, the same eyes he had seen so long ago in the forest. "You remember," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I never forgot," Leora answered. Every battle, every step toward this throne, I carried your kindness with me. It was my strength when the world tried to shape me into a monster. Daniel pulled her into his arms. And for a moment, the Empress was no ruler, no warrior, only the child he had once saved. She held him tightly, her armor cold but her embrace warm. Tears shimmered in her eyes, though she hid them from her court. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. Their world had never seen such a thing, a human embraced by an empress. Soldiers whispered, trying to understand. Some feared this bond, others respected it, but none could deny its power. When Leora stepped back, she turned to her people, her voice sharp with authority. This man will be honored not as a servant, not as a subject, but as family. His name will stand in the halls of history beside mine. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. I never wanted power, Leora. I only wanted you to live. And because you wanted only that, she said softly, you gave me everything. Later, in the quiet of her private chambers, away from the eyes of nobles and soldiers, Leora sat across from Daniel. The glow of the stars poured through tall crystal windows. For the first time since her rise, her voice was not the voice of an empress but of a daughter. Did you wait for me? She asked gently. Daniel nodded, his eyes heavy with years of sorrow. Every day, he said, I thought I lost you. I thought they took you away forever. Her hand touched his, strong yet trembling. They tried. But your kindness burned in me. They could not take it. It shaped me. It made me who I am. Daniel studied her. The lines of her face both alien and familiar. She was regal, powerful, yet the small cub he had fed in the forest lived inside her still. He felt both pride and sadness, pride for what she had become, sadness for the years lost between them. You carry a burden, he said quietly. She looked out the window at the endless stars. Yes, she admitted, an empire that must be guided, 1,000 worlds that must be healed, but I will not guide them alone. I will guide them with the memory of you, and with the mercy you taught me. Daniel's heart swelled. For years, he had thought his life was empty, wasted, but now he realized that a single act of kindness had shaped the fate of galaxies. When the court was summoned again, Daniel walked beside the Empress. His simple clothes beside her royal armor made a strange picture, but none dared speak against it. For in her eyes was fire, and in her words was truth. She had chosen her path. And it was mercy. That night, as the city lights shimmered like stars below, Daniel stood on a balcony, Leora beside him. He whispered to her, I'm proud of you, little one. Leora smiled, her eyes glowing softly. I am proud of you too, Father of Mercy. The galaxy watched as an empress stood beside a human, a bond unbroken by time or distance, and in that bond lay the promise of a new future. The galaxy had seen many rulers, some cruel, some wise, but none like Empress Leora. Her rise to power shook the stars. Yet it was her bond with a human that truly changed the future. Everywhere whispers spread of the man called Father of Mercy, the one whose kindness had given birth to an empress who ruled not with fear, but with compassion. Daniel walked through the shining halls of the crystal citadel, still in awe of where life had brought him. He had never sought glory, never dreamed of standing beside rulers, yet here he was, a simple man remembered as the heart behind 1,000 worlds. His steps were slow, his hair gray, but his eyes glowed with quiet pride. Leora walked beside him, her crown gleaming, her violet eyes sharp yet warm. She was both empress and daughter. She carried armies at her command, but in Daniel's presence, she was the same cub who had once pressed her head into his palm for comfort. Your story is known everywhere now, she told him one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the capital. Even children in distant colonies know that mercy can shape destiny. Daniel smiled faintly, his rough hands resting on the glowing crystal necklace. It was never about destiny, he said. It was about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. Her gaze softened. And because you did, whole civilizations have hope. Across the galaxy, things began to change. Where once rulers demanded tribute, they now sought balance. Where once soldiers conquered with fire, they now paused, remembering the Empress's words. Stories of her kneeling to a human spread like wildfire, shaming tyrants and inspiring the powerless. At the edge of the empire, colonies that had long feared destruction began to trust. Leora sent food, healers, and teachers, not armies. For the first time in generations, peace grew stronger than war, and in every speech, she reminded her people that kindness was not weakness, but strength. Daniel watched all of this with quiet awe. He often wondered if his small act in the forest truly deserved such weight. One night he asked her, "Why hold on to me so tightly? When you could rule alone," Leora turned to him, her eyes burning softly. "Because mercy is rare, Father, and mercy is strong. The Empire tried to make me into a weapon, but your kindness reminded me that power without compassion is empty. You gave me the only truth that mattered, and I will never let it go." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He had carried guilt for years, believing he had failed her when the soldiers took her away. But now, seeing her stand as Empress, he realized he had not failed at all. He had planted a seed, and it had grown into something greater than he could imagine. When Daniel walked among the people of the capital, aliens of every kind bowed their heads in respect. Children ran to him, eager to hear the tale of the human who fed a dying cub. He would sit with them, his voice gentle, telling the story not as one of glory, but of choice. "One small act," he would say, "can echo across the stars. Never forget that." As the years passed, his bond with Leora grew deeper, not just of father and daughter, but of two souls bound by destiny. She trusted his counsel when others offered only politics and war. He reminded her of the simple truths, that mercy could break chains, that kindness could outshine any crown. But Daniel was only human. His strength faded. His body grew old one evening as the sun set over the city of crystal towers. He sat beside Leora, his voice weak but steady. "I won't be here forever," he whispered. Her hand tightened around his, her eyes glowing with sorrow. "But you will always be here," she said, pressing his hand against her chest. "Your kindness lives in me. It will live in every world I touch, in every life I protect." Daniel smiled faintly, tears filling his eyes. "Then my burden was never wasted," he whispered. "It was the greatest gift I ever gave." When his final day came, the galaxy mourned. Entire fleets dimmed their lights in silence. Worlds held vigils, and children spoke his name as if it were legend. And at the center of it all, Empress Leora stood tall. Tears glistening in her violet eyes, she declared, "The man who fed a cub gave birth to an empire of mercy. His kindness will never fade. It will echo forever across the stars." From that day forward, the throne of the Empress bore not only her crown, but a symbol of a human's hand holding a small cub. It became a mark of mercy, a reminder to all rulers that true strength came not from fear but from compassion. And so, the story of Daniel and Leora lived on, told across galaxies. A simple human's kindness had shaped the fate of 1,000 worlds, and in every corner of the stars, his name was remembered not as warrior or conqueror, but as Father of Mercy.